Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ellison Legals in case you missed it. We're now in December, so I'm just going to go over November's posts. So, housekeeping, a couple of disclosures. Ellison Legal has limited liability under a scheme approved by the Professional Standards legislation, and this webcast is not intended to give you legal advice, and so it shouldn't be taken to be legal advice. So if you do need legal advice, please contact your legal practitioner so you can get that advice that is tailored to your specific situation. So I'm just going to go look now and see what posts we did have in November. So we've got 4 posts, and the first, and it was all about lease considerations. And so when I say lease considerations, I mean retail and commercial lease, not residential lease. So the first post was about a fit out. Now, 2 things to consider with the fit out is there an already existing fit out in the premises, or do you need to put in a fit out? So the last tenant in the leased premises might have had a fit out and they've taken it all out, so you need to go put one in there, or there might be one already existing there for 2 reasons. One, you could have just had the same type of business, the same use for what that fit out has there, or it could be a purchase of business. So you've gone and purchased a business and you're happy with the layout already. So it's either going to be there already or it's one that you need to put in. But either way, if you're taking over a lease, check what the terms of the lease are. But in either situation, negotiate as part of your lease what is to happen at the end of your lease when you leave. Do you need to remove the entire fit out and put it back the way you found it, so that's your make good clause, or are you going to have part of your negotiations to keep it there because the landlord wants it kept there for the next tenant? So that can be part of your negotiations. The second post was about permitted use. Now, those 2 words, permitted use, are quite important when it comes to leases. And the very first thing is, under the Retail Leases Act, there are specific types of businesses that can be classed as a retail lease. Now, if you are classed as a retail lease, you come under the Retail Leases Act, and then there are additional provisions that relate to a retail lease which further protect those businesses. So that was the first thing to look at with a permitted use. Where exactly is this going to class you if you're a retail lease or a commercial lease? The other thing with permitted use is it is important to get this one right, because when you are taking out a lease, you also do need to check the council consent. What consent has been provided for that piece of land? What type of business can be carried out on that piece of land? So your permitted use is very important. The third post was about outgoings, and so when you make an agreement to enter into a lease, you have how long the lease is, what land it is. Obviously, that's the main thing. And of course what rent you'll be paying. But there's also something called outgoings. So who's going to pay for water, council, land tax? A friend of mine on my post, thank you, added for me strata levies. So I didn't put everything in there, but that can also apply. Land tax and insurances. So many different things can be part of the negotiations of what does the landlord pay, what do you pay, do you both pay, what proportions do you pay? So consider those outgoings. Again, under the Retail Leases Act, if you are holding a retail lease, additional provisions apply to protect the tenant, and one of those things is under a retail lease is that the landlord has to provide you with a lessor's disclosure statement, and in that disclosure statement they have to itemise and outline specifically what all those outgoings are. What are the expected outgoings going to be? Because you need to be informed and have a good idea of what it is you are likely to be up for. And they can be even estimated costs. The last post was about lease registration. So sometimes when I have clients coming to me and saying, oh, we want to renew our lease, so new clients, and I look at their existing lease, it's maybe like just a 2-page lease document, just a very, very simple one. But I do get a little bit concerned because I think to myself, how are you protecting yourself? Because I check title and they're not registered on title. So part of your lease process, it is in your best interests, and there are provisions where this is mandatory, but it's not always mandatory. Again, so seek legal advice whether it is mandatory or not. So that would be having your lease registered on title. What that means is you have a lease, you are going to the land titles office, you are showing them that lease and saying to the world, to the public, I have a right to be here, I'm leasing this property, here is the document, if anyone has a claim to this land, just know I've got some rights here. So and one of those main things is to be occupying the premises. So this is quite critical, especially if something's happened with your landlord, and if they're an individual, they're being declared bankrupt, or if it's a company, they're going into liquidation, and then creditors will be wanting to look at that entity and see what assets do they have. Is the lease premises up for grabs? If your lease is not registered on title, that's a bit of a problem for the tenants. So it's a very good idea to have it registered on title. But like I said, there are some situations where it is mandatory. So that is an important thing to do. So those were the 4 things: the fit out, the permitted use, outgoings, and lease registration. So they are only a few considerations. There are so many more considerations, but I'm just pointing out a select few. So I'm going to put that down. So that was November's posts, and I will see you back in a month going over December's posts, but it is around the Christmas and New Year time, so it won't be so substantive. It will just be well wishes. So I will check in just to see how everyone's going, and wish you all a good holiday. So until then, thank you for watching. Bye.